Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Autocar Business Changemakers podcast in association with Tomorrow's Journey. I'm joined as ever in the studio by Chris Kirby, CEO of Tomorrow's Journey. And joining us today for a chat is Rob Buckland, who is the Chief Sales Officer at GRIDSERVE. Thank you very much for coming in and joining us. How are you?
Pleasure, yeah, really good. Very warm, but very good. So thanks for having me. Thank you.
We were just saying, by the time this goes out in kind of mid-October, everyone's going to be freezing cold, but it's the one hot week of the year we're recording this. Hence
warm out
the shorts, good. And this will probably be a super short podcast. It'll get really hot in here. We'll just be like, yeah, that'll do.
The only time I've come in the podcast studio for a bit of respite, actually. Usually it's an absolute furnace. Rob, I think we should start. People know GRIDSERVE very well. Sure. It's quite a prominent company in our sphere, but probably more for the charging than the leasing, which is what you're primarily involved with. Can you tell us a little bit about that relationship?
Sure, yeah. We at GRIDSERVE, we have a very unique solution in the market called Sun to Wheel. You say GRIDSERVE know us. A lot of people know GRIDSERVE. They do if you own an electric car and you charge on our network. But outside of that, 99% of the audience that don't drive electric, that's the audience we need to be in front of. So we have a unique solution called Sun to Wheel, which embraces the generation of energy through solar farms, through the distribution of energy through our charge point network, which is nationwide, from Land's End to John O'Groats, and then through the wheel element, which is the leasing side of the business. So how do we get more and more people into EVs and then connect that to our solar and our network?
Okay, and when did you become involved in that program?
Sure.
How long has it been going on?
Yeah, so I joined GRIDSERVE back in January 21. My background is all automotive. So coming into a sustainable energy business to set up an automotive arm, part of that business was interesting. It has been interesting. It's been challenging. It's been really rewarding, and it's been really exciting to challenge the market in such a way that we want to encourage more and more people to go EV and make that more accessible to more people. Which is needed, right? Because we've got a climate emergency that we're tackling head on as a business, and the mission of GRIDSERVE is to move the needle on climate change.
And what, it's a strange question, what came first? It's a bit of a chicken or egg question.
Sure.
Was it the need for charging that motivated GRIDSERVE and then the leasing came as part of that, or do you think it was a two-pronged attack?
Interestingly, we're a sustainable energy business first and foremost, right? So, we've been established for 6-7 years as a sustainable energy business. Solar is the first thing. Our founders, they date back some time, through their family generations in solar. They've always been in tech-enabled solar farms, which are really cool. If you ever get to see one, they're pretty insane. Solar first. We then had, Toddington Harper, our CEO, had this wacky idea of building the world's first electric forecourt, which is based in Braintree in Essex, which opened during the pandemic. Crazy, but we went through it, right, and we came out the other end, and now it's a vibrant place to be. So the vision behind that was replacing the standard petrol forecourt with a beautiful electric forecourt where there's no smell of petrol and fumes and all this stuff. It's a really cool place to be. And the idea was then to use those centres as these EV experience centres, to really encourage the local communities to come out and engage around going EV. So I think through the COVID that was challenging, but it's really now found its place. With the help of Tomorrow's Journey, Chris over there, we've been able to establish a really cool test drive solution, which enables us to encourage people to book test drives, turn up, and just engage with our amazing gurus on site, who are, in effect, the Apple geniuses of the world. They are all about, they're not pressure selling, they are there to advise and guide people in going EV. But not just to go EV, once you've adopted an EV, then to help you live with it and charge freely and easily, etc. That's the vision of what we've created.
And I guess from the vehicle point of view, there's been, as there is in the business that you described, kind of the solar to charging to vehicle and kind of creating the sun to wheel. It's been a bit the same in a micro way with the vehicles, right? So the first thing is experience, get people in, help aid the transition. I think you guys are probably one of the the few places, if the only place that you can go and test drive kind of multiple EVs.
Absolutely.
It used to be the EV Centre in Milton Keynes. I remember actually went probably a little bit before its time.
Sure.
We've kind of had that sort of situation, but you can come to a forecourt and try a BMW and then try a Hyundai and then try a Genesis. So
Absolutely.
have that option. So that's getting people comfortable with the product and the different products. And then I guess it's building on top of the services, right? So the leasing and sales sack and other things that are happening. So how have you guys found that transition?
Yeah, really, really interesting, because we've come into a space where we can see EV adoption is growing at a rate. It's growing at a rate probably more for fleets and sales sack than it is consumer. We offer leasing solutions across all of those markets. So we've got a consumer offering, we've got a fleet offering, and we've also just launched salary sacrifice. I say just in June, which is doing really, really well. It's kind of coming at it slightly differently to Octopus, but very much a similar process. You touch on the EV experience at the forecourts. It's fully brand agnostic. We're not representing one brand. We're not trying to replace a dealership. We're trying to come at this as the EV experts in the market. So if you want to come into a electric forecourt and understand how to charge a car, how to live with one, we can help with test drives and extended test drives to enable that, to actually get an experience in any brand. You could do back-to-back test drives, and then once you've found the right place or where that fits for you, we can help with leasing solutions, whether that is leasing or subscription and things like that we're looking to extend our offering into that consumer space. So I think, for us it's been interesting trying to, because we only offer EVs, we don't offer anything else in the market. So if you're on the fence and you want hybrid, you want to make that transition, that jump, which a lot of people seem to think they do want to make, albeit it's the wrong one, because it's you can go from petrol, you can live with an EV. We do it, etc. And I drive miles in my car, and it's more accessible than ever. And I think to make that jump to EV, you kind of need to give people that experience to be able to learn and develop their understanding in a non-pressured environment, which you wouldn't get in a dealer environment, right? You wouldn't get that.
No, I've always associated GRIDSERVE. I say always, for the past 2 years, I've associated GRIDSERVE with that experience. It's funny you should mention COVID, because the opening day of Braintree was, I think, my first outing after lockdown, right. And it was it felt like such a moment, because every mainstream EV on sale was there, and the public were dropping in to see what this was all about. And I was back there the other day, and it still feels different. It still feels like almost a destination.
Yes.
And now that you're rolling in that exposure to other brands, I guess people can get a snapshot of the entire market, the entire lifestyle, on one site.
Yes, absolutely. And I think we're taking that further. The EV experience for us is, we're creating this kind of this experience concept. So we've introduced test drives. We did that months and months ago, and that's going really, really well. But actually, how do we then extend that beyond? So how do we actually say an hour's not enough? How do I actually experience it over a weekend? And actually go and pick my kids up and do the shopping and do the normal stuff in it. And that's really important. So we're taking that further. And then even like readiness surveys to understand, actually answer some of these weird and wonderful questions. Let's take someone's average journeys over a week, plot it into a survey, which sounds really dreadful. It's more creative than that, and more exciting than that. And what that churns out is actually which cars would fit best for your requirements. What sort of charging would you do? Are you home-based charging, or are you at the forecourt? Are you out on the road in our electric highway, for example? And it plots all of this out. It's really, really cool. So we want to take that experience further. We really want to use data-led kind of discussions. We want to be able to myth bust in a really creative way and in an enjoyable way for people to come in and actually learn and develop their understanding. The forecourts, we do so much with Cubs and Scout groups and things like that to really educate everyone. The next generation that come through are probably going to be driving electric vehicles, right? So let's talk to them today. Let's actually encourage them today. The partnership with Fulham Football Club, which we've recently done, that was all about, okay, how do we get our brand out into mainstream market, but then actually how do we also work with their academies, the younger generation, to help support that EV adoption. We've just rolled out salary sacrifice to the Fulham Fulham Football Club, 350 employees, and you know the idea there is to get them going green, get them join EVs. They charge at Motspur Park on our chargers, so you know it was a really cool partnership. But it's we can do that, you know, with multiple fleets, with multiple businesses, and encourage the employee base to go EV through EV experience.
I think recently as well, the one that we talked about, and I think I loved seeing it come online, was with Molly's Diner as well. That partnership, again, the place that uses your charging, or part of your charging infrastructure, and you know, partnering with them as a kind of Soho House, you know, type initiative, and then having vehicles there to test drive for the weekend. Actually, like 2 weekends after I stayed at one, actually, I was
really?
like, I want to go back and try. But it was nice for me. Click on the link, and it was the TJ platform, which is fun. But like that kind of thing as well, being able to partner up with people like that as well.
That is crucial. So you know, Molly's are an amazing partner of ours. We've worked with them for many years for charging. We've always talked around, how do we take it further? How do we give your visitors, you know, your hotel stay or your diner visitors an experience? How do we get them thinking about going EV? And that was we were enabled to tie into our EV experience with their Molly's drive-through or drive-in cinema experience, which was powered by GRIDSERVE. So that was pretty cool experience to do that, and we will do more and more of that around the UK. Using your platform, we will be able to take our EV experience on the road.
The one thing I'm quite interested to hear from you is a lot of what you've just mentioned, the data-driven surveys, the experience, the exposure to lots of different brands. There's so much noise at the moment from all corners of the market. How do you cut through that? How do you tell your customers this is what the reality looks like? Yeah,
for us, it's the experience. It's us like hitting it head on, you know. And I think the only way you can challenge that is by kind of being a bit creative. You take the Mollies. You know, we could have sat still and said, "No, we're not going to do that."
But actually, put one car there for a couple of days or something.
No, let's tackle it head on. Let's get out there and tackle it head on. I think by giving people an experience in a car is really the only way to kind of tackle people's the FUD, all the noise out there, all the stuff that's going on around driving EVs. I've driven an EV now for 3 years. I moved from my combustion engine vehicle, which I adored, into an EV. Not the easiest transition to a Peugeot E208, but it's progressed since then, thankfully. But you know, I think that was kind of like, you know, the ring of fire, like, wow, okay, I'm in an EV now, geez, I've got to live with this. And in the winter was very interesting at times on the M25 to my trip to Braintree from Berkshire. But I can, it's livable, it's doable, and it's easier now than ever. You know, with our charge infrastructure, which is growing at a rate. You know, we've just we're at 171 locations now around the UK. When I joined, we had one. We had one at Braintree, so that's 2.5-3 years ago nearly. So you can see the rate that we're running, and we're doing that because we've got a climate emergency that we need to hit head on. And as GRIDSERVEs, we are all bought into that. You know, no day we can't stand still on any one day. We have to keep moving forward. We have to keep finding solutions, keep being innovative, keep tackling the noise head on. You know, in a positive way. We're not trying to greenwash anyone or anything like that. We're not trying to you know, brainwash anyone about going electric. We are passionate about doing something about our climate.
And going in eyes open. Again, we've talked a lot about EV transition through this podcast series, and you know, a lot of it is about going in with your eyes open, not just going in and going, I'll just pick the coolest looking one, because that might not be the thing that's best suited for you. It's not suitable for everyone, but as you said, I think like most people should be able to transition pretty easily, and then it's understanding what that means for you, because again, everybody's different, right? And I think getting that EV experience, it's a different challenge to ICE vehicles, because everyone's used to it. So you go and test drive, you go, I'm going to spend Saturday test driving some cars, you go to 2 or 3 dealers driving around the industrial estate. Oh, I liked the whizzy button on this thing, I'll buy it. It's different in an EV when you're making the transition. So that experience, the best way for me at least is to cut through the noise, is get in one, have it for a bit.
Totally agree.
So maybe you want to try and come. What I've said a few times to people is like, if you're really not sure, go and try a few. And somewhere like Braintree's great, where you can just go, okay, right, well, the Ioniq 5 is really big inside. I really like that. Okay, so I'll take that over the Polestar or whatever. And then maybe go and subscribe to one for a couple of months.
Yeah.
So, or take an extended test drive. Maybe then you subscribe to one for a couple of months, and then you can start to make some real informed choices about it. And that's really for me like the only way to cut through that real noise is you go, well, look, I promise you those things aren't true. Have one.
Yes.
And that's definitely it. And that's where I think you guys are doing such a great job in that space, right?
Yeah, and I think there's more to do for us. You know, we currently go from a 1 hour test drive to leasing. There needs to be something in the middle. It's got to be. Yeah. And I think for us, you know, that extended test drive view that we have, you know, how do we take someone from an hour test drive and you love it, great, brilliant. Why don't you take it for the weekend, experience it, actually live with it for the weekend, and then, like you say, you know, if you love it that much, but you don't want to commit to a 2-year lease, which is generally where they start, you know, can we take you into a subscription model? Or, you know, even better still, you know, our funders need to think differently around flexible leasing, right? Which is ultimately a subscription. You know, subscription is, you know, classed as a short-term contract, but actually on average subscriptions last for 8, 9, 10 months, 12 months, right? So how do we, and I've challenged the funders on this a few times. I say funders, I'm talking about, you know, the main automotive funders in the market that are behind our leasing solution. You know, how do they look at an EV differently to how you would a combustion engine vehicle today? Today, a combustion engine vehicle, they put a contract on the road, but they price it for 3 years. Okay, that's great, but what happens to an EV after 3 years? Why can't we second life it? Why can't we actually look at an EV over an 8-year life cycle and then utilise that asset beyond the first contract in a subscription, a car club, a rental model, etc., rather than just putting it to auction? So this is how we the market needs to be a bit more innovative, a bit more, you know, pioneering. And as GRIDSERVE, you know, we are pushing those ideas to funders. We're pushing those ideas to market because we've got to find solutions to tackle the climate crisis, and that's why we exist the way we do today.
Why is there that reticence, do you think, from the funders perhaps to adopt these new ways of thinking?
It's a different product, isn't it? It's and you know, all of a sudden EVs have just started to grow at such a rate, and you know, and we're starting to see first iterations of cars coming back into the second-hand market, and buyers aren't there for them generally, you know, so they need to be used differently. They need to be, you know, I've got this idea that I want to get out there, which is all about how do we bring people to an EV marketplace type solution. You know, how do we bring someone into an EV marketplace with funders' vehicles are sitting and not moving through auctions through no fault of anyone? There's just, EVs are at a point where there's a lot of learning that needs to happen across the market. Whether that's a funder, whether it's a consumer, whether it's a fleet manager, or whatever it might be, there's a lot of learning. And as GRIDSERVE, we're very passionate about, okay, so you know, how do we prove that actually after the first life, the batteries are still in really good health? We bought a business last year that's now labelled up as GRIDSERVE Technologies, and they did a huge study with LEVC, the black cabs, millions of miles of data around actually battery life and conditions and state of health and all this type of stuff, and we want to bring that into the mainstream audience as a de facto battery passport. So you know, you drive a GRIDSERVE car, you have it on your first life of contract, it comes back, and we know the health of the battery's 8 years plus, predicted life of the battery if it's used in the same way. Put it into the rental market, put it into subscription, second life at used EVs, etc. You know, or a used EV leasing, which is another thing the funders need to come to market with. So this is all the stuff we're trying to hit head on.
I spoke to those guys that you just mentioned, the battery modelers, about 3 years ago under their old name. And the data they gave me then and the animations they showed me, the spreadsheets, a lot of it went over my head, I'll admit. But a lot of it was so eye-opening. It's why is this not more widely known that you can have a 4-year-old EV and it's a new car? You know, we don't need to factor in 50% depreciation curves because you are effectively still buying something that's just come out the factory.
Absolutely.
In a way.
No timing belts and
exactly.
And stuff, all this stuff that the engine starts to get loose after 60. There isn't that. There's so few moving parts, but it is the bit of the unknown, right? We had Toby from the BVRLA on earlier in the season, and he was talking about this kind of area of unknown for the leasing companies. SMR is really unknown. There's not the data there to be able to predict properly. So there's this kind of like fear of the unknown, whereas actually they should be a real safe bet, but it just needs to be thought differently.
Agree.
But in the kind of single life, single use, like an ICE vehicle, it's actually probably a little bit terrifying for those guys. Now they're starting to see tens of thousands of them rolling through the books, right? So,
absolutely. And I think the data is insane, right? But that presents another argument. Well, who owns the data? And the OEMs have data that maybe they don't share or whatever, and we're collecting data on telematics that maybe go against some of the OEM predictions of how the batteries would perform and all this type of stuff. So there's a whole data piece in there that is quite difficult to understand and navigate through, and I think that's where a lot of the challenges are. But I think we're in a society that needs to make changes quickly and fast, because of the climate crisis and all that stuff that's going on. So we need to cut through that stuff. Really quick.
Visibility to that sort of data, to those, it's reassuring, I think, a lot of that data that gets revealed by these sorts of studies. That could come to underpin a leasing model in the vein of GRIDSERVEs, whereby you need to convince people that they can own a car on a flexible basis and give it back knowing that it's going to be in perfect health and they've not got to pay ridiculous money.
That is vital, right? And that's our goal as a business is to connect cars with charging, with solar, etc. The view there is to we've got an app that we're working on behind the scenes, which will be out hopefully early next year. It's in test as we speak, but that is about bringing kind of Tesla-esque experience, right? So, but very much brand agnostic. We're not one brand. So anyone that leases a car from us, why can't we be giving them access to an app which shows them battery health whenever they want it? It shows them that actually they're driving and they're 20 miles away from one of our charge points, and we've got too much sun from our solar arrays that we can give you half an hour free charging on our network. It shows them how to drive more efficiently through the data that we're giving through telematics. It shows them insights into the battery health and guides them in how to use the car more effectively to preserve the battery life. It's all of this type of stuff which we want to bring to market to ensure that consumers or anyone driving an EV feels part of the GRIDSERVE network, feels connected with us as a brand, and adopts an EV and lives with it easily.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that we're going to ask you a bit along a similar line, right? But I think you've got an interesting view on both sides of this. So we talk a bit about consumer adoption and the kind of noise in the market, and also like the industry side. Which do you think is the most challenged? Because your background's similar to mine, from working in funders and stuff. I'm interested to know whether you think like there's more consumers out there questioning EVs, or actually the industry people are there kind of questioning them. Because sometimes I wonder whether a lot of the noise is our own.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think consumers, we've got a long way to go. Affordability is a big problem for people adopting EVs, right? So it's getting better. Like there's more choice than ever, and there's more choice coming, and there's more entry model pricing coming, and funders are really coming to market with some exciting deals. So I think EV adoption is getting easier in the consumer space. It's not supported by all the noise and the nonsense around it, scaremongering and all this type of stuff that gets generated from whatever. So I think it's really important that, and that's why we EV experience centres is where we put them together. We're not trying to brainwash anyone. We're not trying to push people down the wrong paths and stuff. We're trying to do it from a point of brand agnostic, very hands-off type approach. Which vehicle fits your requirements through data that we've gained from a survey, from information you've inputted, to guide you in the right way, and then support you once you've adopted. Fleets. Well, I've heard loads of things about fleet adoption. There's resistance to do so because drivers don't want to adopt an EV because of the scaremongering, right? And fleet managers don't want to adopt them because it's challenging. How do we keep them charged all the time? How do we effectively make sure that anyone charging a car on our network is they're auto build and all this type of stuff? We're coming up with solutions to help that. We've at Braintree in Essex, our electric forecourt, we help the Royal Mail adopt 70 odd electric vans, and they use our network to charge our forecourts really quickly to keep uptime, keep them moving. So these are sort of things which we're doing to try and help the EV adoption. But yeah, so it is challenging. It really is challenging, but we don't see it as a challenge. We thrive to that. Actually, we enjoy it. We enjoy kind of coming up with solutions for these challenges. So it's becoming easier and easier. The network's growing. More EVs are coming to the market at affordable prices. And then we've got to come up with new products and solutions to help EV adoption far easier, such as subscription. And
what is that engagement like? What reaction are you getting from customers? Are you building a following? Are they listening basically?
They are probably not as quickly as we'd like, but they are definitely. We're growing as a business, right? I'm talking about the leasing arm here. We've kind of really got going middle of last year, and it's my background is pretty much all leasing, select car leasing, etc. I spent many years there, which was an awesome experience, a great product, but ICE and EV and everything, right? So we are just EV, so that kind of limits us a little bit in the market, our appeal. But the most searched vehicle in the market, or the most searched drivetrain in the vehicle in the market today is EV, right? So there's a huge opportunity, and for me it's 99% of the audience don't drive EV, so we've got a huge opportunity there to get more and more people into these vehicles. I think it's just an exciting time. People are listening. We've got more of a following than ever. Our leasing following online, 4.9 out of 5 on Trustpilot. Our charging network is now 4.1 out of 5, and that's a hard thing to do. 170 locations, thousands of charge points out there. They're not all going to be uptime every single time. It's not going to be easy. We challenge that because we send grid servers out to the network to help support charging experiences at Rugby service station, at Exeter, at Cornwall, or wherever it might be, because we're passionate about ensuring that people are having a good experience. So we're hitting it head on, and trust me, that's not easy, because you can pull up to some of these chargers and you've got queues of people trying to charge their cars. They're not happy because there's not enough chargers, and we're trying our best to keep moving at the pace we need to move. But to go there as a grid server and help support our customers in charging, we are trying to create that ambassadorial approach of customers, whether you're a leasing customer, whether you're a charging customer, whether you're interested in going EV and you just want a bit of support. We're very passionate people to help that happen.
And are you finding it tricky because, well, certainly on this podcast we've explored a lot of different leasing models from various players in the market, OEMs, startups, even companies moving into that sphere from completely other industries. So how do you stand out in a way? How do you compete with those other names?
Sure. So I think I mentioned at the start about us connecting the car, the customer, and charging. That's how we stand out, right? So when you lease an electric car from us, whether that's been derived from online, whether it's derived from a forecourt, you've gone in and you spoke to a guru, you've had an amazing experience there, you've test drove cars, and then you spoke to our leasing team to engage on the lease. You then, once you take delivery of that vehicle, you then get 3 months free energy across our network, which is sustainable energy. We're providing the energy from our own solar farms we've generated ourselves. And we give you 3 months free charging, and we plant 100 trees to offset any carbon from the production of that vehicle. So, and we don't stop there. We then try and encourage engagement through charging experiences through the network as well. So, and I think that's how we're different to competitors in the market. We see our customers' lifetime value. We want to. When I say about the app that we're releasing next year, that's to encourage more engagement. So, if we generate a ton of energy, ton of electricity from the sun, from our solar farms, we then we get charged weirdly by National Grid when there's too much power going into the grid. So how can we then give that experience to our customers to say, look, we know you're 10 miles away, we can see your car's at 50%, pop in for a 30-minute free charge at rugby service stations, for example, or whatever it might be. That's the experience we want to bring, and we are working tirelessly to bring that to life behind the scenes. So, and that's how we would connect solar, charging and the car together.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think a lot of people maybe don't realise how data sharing like that can actually facilitate a journey, make it a lot quicker, and that sort of, it's hard to manage though, that sort of thing. Maybe the understatement of the year, but you can't expect to instantly hit a button and every car is connected to this system and working flawlessly in a way. So how long will it take to build up that sort of dream scenario?
Yeah, so we obviously today we sit in a kind of a broker model. Our view is to move to a funder model, so where we can take control of the client and give them that GRIDSERVE experience in its entirety. Right now, broker, we sit in the middle between a customer and a funder, that's an amazing model, and it's been very successful in the market for many years, and that won't go away. But how do we give that GRIDSERVE experience in its entirety is by funding our own solution, which is definitely a view that we'd like to move to. Our vision is to give that full kind of experience of GRIDSERVE, whether that's you're seeking advice online and you're an online journey, to someone that's walking into a forecourt, whether that's at Braintree, whether that's at Norwich or Gatwick, which is opening this year, to get an EV experience, whether it's a road show and you've seen us at a road show, you've test driven our vehicles, etc., to then leasing, whether that's subscription to a flexible lease to a lease. We want to connect that all together, and then also taking it into the contract, we want to connect that journey to our charging network as well across the nation. So and the only way of doing that really is taking control of that customer, and giving them that experience, not just for one contract, for multiple contracts for 10 years, etc.
I'm trying to think, is this the first time we've discussed leasing as an experience, something you can
I
actually
think so, yeah.
do and enjoy almost?
Yeah, so we've talked a lot about the digital experience as well, and something that also I'm interested to get your thoughts on, because we've talked a lot about experiencing an EV, getting in it and driving it, and the importance of that, which also we've talked about during the series. But also we've talked about digitalisation, frictionless,
yes.
A lot of people buying online now.
Yes.
It's definitely the subscription type models and car sharing, this digital side. And I guess interested to get your thoughts on how you see those combining, because ultimately for an EV, and particularly if you're looking at converting them, you'll get them to sit in one and drive one, right? So just how you're kind of blending that seamless digital experience, but also with the physical one.
There's room for both, I think. There really is. And I think, I've operated in the dealer world, very passionate about those times, great times, and they do an amazing job. But when you can go into an EV experience centre with multiple brands around you, have a touch screen kind of model to see different vehicles and different, what options you can add on the vehicles and all that stuff, and be spoken to by a guru who's got no interest other than just offering advice to you in how to adopt an EV and live with it, to then having a website which is then rich of all that content too, that's then supported by a leasing team which is again just fully passionate about getting you into the right car that fits your requirements. I'm very passionate about both of those models, and we seem to have captured both of those quite well at the moment. There's always room for improvement, always room to move that forward, always room to take that experience further, and to the point where we really want to get to the point where someone could go into a electric forecourt of ours, and we've got ambitions to build 100 of those by 2030. We're on our third one, which is in Gatwick Airport, the world's first electric forecourt at an airport location. Very excited about that. We've got 7 or 8 others, I think, in pipeline for next year, that will be live, or moving to be live by the end of next year. So those experiences are all about that physical experience. We've got a customer engagement team around physical experience and digital experience. So we're passionate about making sure that both of those worlds can come together and blend nicely together. From like I say, from a brand agnostic point of view, so we can offer advice on any product, and then once you're on the road in your new EV, we can then connect you to our network as well, which is really exciting.
Yeah, I guess it's product as well in kind of two dimensions, because you've got the product as in what car, but product as in what financing option, or what's your method of getting it. And I guess that's something that you want to open up those options even further, but already kind of start to have more of them. So maybe some people it would be better to buy one. Mostly it might be longer term leasing, but sometimes shorter term, sometimes more flexible.
Yeah, and I think EV lends itself really well. Electric vehicles lend itself really well to leasing, or flexible leasing or subscription or whatever it might be, because it's a new drivetrain. It's something that someone's got to get used to and adopt and adapt to. So I think it's important to give them the opportunity to experience, whether that's a test drive, whether it's extended test drive, whether it's subscription or whatever it might be. I think there's definitely room for all of those products to come and find their way in the market. We want to deliver all of them. So our goal is to try and find solutions for those. At the moment, we offer leasing 2 to 5 years. It's not good enough. We need some more stuff lower end as well, which is why we embrace the TJ platform to allow us to come into that market, that space. I think for us it's ensuring that there's opportunities to fund that meet the requirements of our audience. So whether that is a consumer, whether it's a fleet that want to trial some EVs in their fleet, but let's give them a solution to do that. Let's give them the telematics from our GRIDSERVE technologies to show them that actually these drivers are ready, and this is why. This is proven data to show them why they're ready. These are the journeys they're actively doing every week, and they pass our locations every week. This is how we enforce change and encourage change, and hopefully they embrace it. And these are solutions we're coming up with.
How low can you go? You talk about 2 to 5 years isn't a big enough window of availability. So how much lower could you go? Could you go larger in terms of fleet adoption? What's the biggest fleet you could imagine supplying?
Yeah, so we our goal is to be the go-to EV brand in the market, right? So for anything, whether that's an experience, whether it's education, whether it's actually adopting a fleet. And we're supported by some awesome funders in the market. Like I said earlier, our goal is to actually fund our own book and operate as a funder. So then we've got control of the solutions we can bring to market. We can be innovative in that space. We can be very creative, and our goal is to definitely kind of take control of that. But how low can we go? I think subscription is something we don't offer today. Something we're very keen to look at offering, because it's important that we can give a variety of options to the market, opportunities to come into our space, into the EV space. But it's also then not to just come into it, because we've seen people come into it and then not be too happy or satisfied with how it's gone. So how do we get our customers, the GRIDSERVE customers, into that space and stay with it? And if a product's not working for them, then how can we encourage them to either change the way they're using that vehicle to suit the requirements, or flexible leasing to the ability to say, well, that's not worked for you, let's try something else. And it's that space we need to be creative in and be innovative around the products we offer to that space, that market.
And that's what creates that loyalty, right? Again, another constant kind of theme that's come back up is this change from having a customer, and again, you'll remember from your dealer days, as I do, of the buy or sell to the customer and then renew them in 3 years' time. And there's a gap in the middle, whereas there's more of an option, particularly with EVs, just to have a cyclical relationship.
Absolutely.
And the kind of old Netflix for cars is a way overused analogy, right? And it's not the right one, but that idea of having a customer who would become a GRIDSERVE customer and just stay as a GRIDSERVE customer for 10 years, 20 years, whatever, and they might go from having a small EV that they have on a 3-month rolling subscription to then leasing something, and then eventually they're in a family vehicle. They've got 3 cars in their household, all from GRIDSERVE under a same account.
For sure.
That kind of transition becomes something that I think lends itself really well to EVs, but also to an organisation like GRIDSERVE, where you've kind of got that brand agnosticness, but enough of a footprint in the area.
Totally agree. Yeah, and we've had many conversations on it, right? So it's definitely the route we want to take, and we are definitely moving to.
The main purpose of this podcast is bring Chris's pub conversations to a mass audience who actually did have this conversation over a beer. So, we've definitely had it many times before. But yeah, I think one of the things I was going to kind of ask you as we're getting more towards the end of this is just and I think probably we've touched on it in loads of places through the conversation, but what is the kind of future for GRIDSERVE in that kind of leasing space? What do you see kind of the next 12 to 18 months being sort of your key developments?
Sure, 12 to 18 months is a long time, right? And lots can happen in GRIDSERVE, certainly. I think I've mentioned it a few times. I think we want to bring more and more opportunities for people to engage with EV to the market, so more solutions and innovation. So I said about our app, how do we, in 18 months time, we want a solution where someone could engage with us online or physical through our forecourts, through our roadshow experiences, etc. To then being able to pull up at a charger and have their half an hour free charging on our network, and all of that's driven by our app. We want to be able to offer more and more opportunities for people to come into that space. So new solutions such as flexible leasing, used EV leasing, used EV marketplace, that type of solution. We want to bring to market. Our salary sacrifice program I mentioned is doing extremely well. Really well. We've only really rolled it out, like I said, in June. But that for us is making it more affordable for more people to come into the EV space. Because it's deducted from salary, etc. It's got all your insurance encompassed in there. But again, that starts at 2 years. So how do we then bring a 12-month solution, etc. To people? There's 18 months from here, we'll have a connected car charging infrastructure with our leasing experience, and encompass that full sun-to-wheel model.
This might sound pessimistic, and I don't mean it to, but is there any way that your business could not grow exponentially over the next 12 to 18 months? Because as EV uptake rises, we've got things like the ZEV mandate coming in 1st of January, which we still don't know exactly what it looks like yet, but we know it's going to drive EV uptake.
Sure.
These are all going to conspire to help you, surely.
Yeah, it's the reason I joined GRIDSERVE 3 years ago was I could see the way the market's moving, and what better place to do what I do in automotive, to bring more and more people to EVs when the 2030 ban. I think the 2030 ban happened the day I pulled up at GRIDSERVE to meet Toddington Harper. So
you brought it on.
I heard it on the radio. I was like, Boris Johnson, this is amazing. So it's the best thing he did. But yeah, I think. I think for me that just kind of that sealed the deal for me in my head where I knew where I needed to operate. And electric vehicles, I've had one for 3 years. I can't stress it's probably the most nicest experience you could have being in an EV, driving effortlessly, stress-free, and it is such a nice experience. And yes, okay, you had the odd charging issue, whatever it might be, but it's very minute. In the same way you could pull up a petrol station with fuel sagas going on, and not be able to fuel your car. Our network's growing exponentially, right? And it's going to continue to grow. We've obviously raised a lot of funding recently, which was in the public eye. Took our fundraise up to £500 million, which is all about growing the infrastructure, growing the network. How do we put forecourts in the ground quicker? How do we put more hubs in the ground quicker? We bought Ecotricity, or the electric highway from Ecotricity, and that gave us access to the MSAs, the motorway service areas across the UK. But we've now started to take our charging hubs to retail sites, so Dobbies. We've done something with Dobbies in Swindon. We've got more of those coming down the tracks, which makes it more accessible to more people. Solstice Park, which is a retail area on the A33. So that for us is another retail site that, and we need more and more of those. And this funding was to help that. help accelerate the growth of charging around the UK. And my job now is to establish funding so we can actually really exponentially grow the leasing arm to put more EVs on the road to keep the charging moving forward at a pace, right? So and then where beyond that, can we take our model into other markets around the world? Absolutely.
Fantastic. Quiet then, not much to do.
Yeah, it's quite busy. It's a bit frantic. It's been very frantic recently, but yeah, last 3 years. I think I didn't have a grey hair in sight. But,
that's a lie. I definitely need
Come on.
Well, the Gatwick site, I remember being dismayed a few months ago because I counted on it being open, didn't do any research, and it wasn't, so I had to drive at 40 miles an hour for 100 miles. But will that be similar to Braintree in that it'll have a sort of showroom element upstairs and cars on site? Yeah,
well, Gatwick's an interesting one for us because utilisation is going to be mad, right? At Gatwick, it's going to be crazy.
That's really going to take off.
Yeah, I like it. It's very good. But
Felix is immediately fired. We need to talk after this. That's really bad.
It's terminal.
Brilliant. But so that's been an interesting model for us to kind of understand. Actually, even like having taxi drivers parking on site whilst they wait for their guests to arrive at the terminal. So and it's not a big footprint, right? It's very much like, so you've been to Braintree, that's kind of a forecourt layout, so all the charges out front. Norwich is very different. Norwich is all charging underneath, retail upstairs, which creates a wicked retail experience and a great, very vibrant atmosphere in there, very different to Braintree. Gatwick's same as Norwich, so all charging underneath. How do we create an EV experience at Gatwick with no real parking for test drives? Will be interesting. So we're working on some concepts around that. I can see Car Club working quite well there for people flying in from Europe or wherever and needing a car to go to a meeting or for a few days, kind of a rental Car Club solution. I can see that working brilliantly at Gatwick. So we're working on solutions to be able to facilitate that. And a very, very much a digital experience upstairs. We're creating this really, really cool kind of genius bar concept, which is very engaging, all about creating a VR kind of AR sort of experience about going EV. But we see that's our international shop front, right?
Can't wait to try it.
Yeah, it'd be awesome.
When did you open?
I think we're aiming for the end of the year. There's some generation of power issues that we're working through at the moment. Okay. The building's up. If you drive around there now, you can see the building. Our construction team are doing an amazing job with that. The aim is for the end of the year to be live with that one.
Cool. I'll definitely head down there, sort of on my usual routes to various places.
Awesome.
Brilliant. Well, I think on that note, the temperature's just reached 46 in here.
Exactly. When the sweat drops come on the brow, that's time to wrap up. That's you.
Sun's a wheel.
It definitely is.
It's all your fault. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for giving us that insight. It's been great to hear from you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris, as always, and thank you to you for listening. We'll see you next time. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Thanks.